Good evening, everybody. Today we are starting off with the next chapter, that is the chapter number 2 of PMBOK 5th edition, and this is about organizational influences and project life cycle. This is again a very important chapter because it highlights some of the very uh, important things, like you will be introduced to some terms like organizational process assets, enterprise environmental factors. Then some of the items we have studied already, like the organizational governance, will now be translated into project governance. And similarly, we will break it down to the project level. This chapter is more about the project. Previous chapter was more of a reference to context. It was introducing you to the environment of the project, where we were talking about the programs and project and portfolio or OPM and strategy and all that. Now we are going to be talking more about the project and its environment, the project environment. And therefore, we will be more concerned about the influences from the organization which are going to impact the project. And also, the most important topic is the project life cycle. Although it comes quite late and we won't be able to cover it today, but we will move on as much as we can, and we will try to cover the enterprise environmental factors and process assets today. Let's see how far can we go. In the first portion, we talk about the organizational influences on the project management. This is probably what we are going to cover today. Then we have got project stakeholders and governance, project team, and project lifecycle. Out of these topics, I think the most important is the project lifecycle, then is the organizational influences, then is the stakeholders and governance, and ultimately the project team. But anyways, we'll cover them in the sequence they appear in this content. If you explore these topics in organizational influences, we'll talk about the organizational culture and style, organizational communication, structures, that is the organizational structures which like functional and projectized and metrics and all that. Then a bit about the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors, project stakeholder and project governance, that is important here from the project point of view, a bit about the project team composition, and lastly the project style life cycle and the phases. So let's start with the very first one, organizational influences. You see, in an organization, as we have already said before, the project exists in an organization. Project is not independent. So whatever kind of organization it is going to have some influence, some impact on the project. Project will have inheritance from the organization. Whatever is the culture of the organization, the way of working, the style of working, the organizational structure in which people are organized in the organization, they all are going to impact the project. Naturally, if it is a lethargic organization, the people doing the project cannot claim to be, very different from that. So generally, they would be following the same pattern. And an organization's degree of project management maturity and project management system can also influence the project. Now this might be a bit tricky, but I know you already understand something about maturity. We did talk about organizational project management maturity model. That means an organization, how mature an organization is in change-oriented initiatives, which include project programs and portfolios, but at least project management maturity is required for doing the projects. And whatever an organization is mature, how much mature they are in the affairs of project management, that is definitely going to impact the way the projects are handled in the organization. Then the other question is, do you have a system of project management in your organization? Or you are running projects in an ad hoc fashion? Are there any policies and procedures? Is there a mechanism under which project management is formally done in your organization, if a system does exist, then again that system is going to impact the projects positively. So more mature your organization is, and better system you have for project management, more are the chances that your projects will be successful. On the other hand, you can look at it conversely as well. If your organization is ad hoc, no systems exist, they are completely immature in project management, they are doing bad practices, not even good practices, then that organization is not really going to have any chances to succeed in their projects. When a project involves external entities as part of a joint venture or partnering, project will be influenced by more than one enterprise. What does that mean? So far we have been talking about an organization, a project being run under an organization. What if the project is being run under a joint venture of more than one organization? People think that in such a circumstance, project manager is all in all and he will have all the authority to do whatever he feels like. But that is a very wrong conception, because project manager will be influenced by all the organizations who are in this joint venture, and they all from different organizations are going to impose their rules and regulations and policies and procedures on the project manager. They will be demanding reports and returns in their own format, which could be a lot of repetition being done by project manager to satisfy each one of those parent companies. So don't think that you can ever be independent project manager. You could control everything in the project on your own. Whatever the organization is on top, or a group of organizations on top of you, they are going to influence you. And your project will be greatly impacted and affected by the structure you are working under. This specific chapter deals with organizational characteristics, factors and assets within an enterprise that are likely to influence the project, and we'll talk about these in a while. First, talking about the organization culture and style. I think before I can say anything, can any one of you tell me what do you think about an organizational culture and how does it impact the organization? Yes, please.
So organization culture means which type of organization is this? Means which type of procedures and things they are following during their operations, means during their for their projects, and which type of environmental they are providing to their peoples, means whether they are providing very good environment, or they are providing relaxed environment, or they are providing some tense environments. So this type of things comes under the organization culture, I think.
Adrish, does that mean that culture is always provided by the organization?
Yes, I think yes.
Okay. Any other opinions? Anyone else who can contribute to that?
Yes, the organization culture is actually collective wisdom of the organization that they actually carry out to achieve their strategic goals.
Okay. Okay. That's all?
Yes, and the next question you ask is how they affect and how they influence, is it?
Right. Okay.
So
So there
earlier,
are two opinions here. Number one was that the culture of the organization is imposed by the senior management. They provide the culture, they provide the policies and procedures, and that was what the opinion of Adris is. Wasif says that is the collective culture. This is how it turns out to be. It is kind of evolutionary. So how do you people see that? which statement is true or which is, more like it. Anyone else? Atif?
Sir, culture and styles are.
Shahid.
Yeah, please continue, Shahid.
Yeah, I think cultures and style are driven by the process or the SOPs you make for the company or the process you make. I mean, it's you enforce your employees or to work in a similar fashion as per the policy or as per the procedures which are laid down for the betterment of the organization.
Okay.
That is one of the key element in driving culture. But again, it's a group of people within an organization there are some Pakistanis or Indians. Within those entities, there could be a difference of working style could be different. So it's a mix and match. I mean, I cannot really say that which one either this way or that way.
So essentially, I would get it that you are talking about evolution of culture as different multicultural people unite into an organization. So culture settles down in an organization. But how much?
Exactly. As far as work is concerned, if the evaluation is there as per the policy and procedure, then it is unified.
It is unified, right? And so the element of policies and procedures is still there, but it does
Yes.
it does evolve. It does evolve within an organization by the type of people who are serving in the organization. Right.
Right, sir. Exactly.
I would tend to agree with that because all of you are right. But you see, when an organization is formed, there are no people as such who are employees and everything. The people sitting at top, they have their own vision. They have their own values in mind, and keeping those values in mind, they will, carve out a culture for the organization as they want to see it. Like if you are serving in military, then there is a culture in military which has been carved out by the seniors, and it says you have to be punctual, you have to be wearing a uniform, you have to obey your seniors, and so on and so forth. So now everything which will happen in military would be, dominated by these cultural values which have been injected into the system right from the outset. And some of you who have said policies and procedures, probably they evolve out of it. So that plays an important role. But as and when people join army or any such structure, there has to be some flexibility. You can't have a very rigid system. The kind of people who get into that setup, they actually evolve the culture. You see, if there is a multinational company and they set up their offices in Dubai, so the local culture has its own impact. But this multicultural company, maybe it is basically based in America, so they will try to bring in the American culture into that building and whatever the staff they have. But because the people hired would be from multicultural environment and especially from the local market, so they will have their own impact. They will probably be speaking in languages other than English also, and thus a new culture will evolve in that organization. But naturally, the organization will keep a watch that nothing goes out of the, preset definition of the organizational culture. For example, 3M has a culture of innovation. Right from the outset, when they formed the organization, they said this organization is being made for the purposes of innovation. We will innovate, we will invent things, we will be creative. So they always encourage hiring only the creative people. That is one of the reasons 3M is one company which has got maximum number of patents to its credit. You see the post-it notes, the squash tape, and a lot many other small little things. have been originated from 3M. So these are the cultural norms and values which we establish, and then we actually nurture them. This is a collective goal of the organization. So this culture translates into a future of the organization, and people inherit this culture. There was one organization, once a new employee was there, and he came up with a new idea, and he was told to submit it to the senior management. So he prepared the proposal, and he gave it to the person to take it on to the senior executive. When he checked where my proposal is, they said it has gone to the cabin. He was completely not understanding what cabin means, and he said, okay, cabin must be some room or some place or something like that. After some days, he also asked again where my proposal is. They said it has gone to the cabin. He was completely confused. So he consulted someone. He asked him, what is a cabin? Nobody knew what a cabin is. And ultimately, he got hold of a person who was senior enough and old in the organization, and he was one of the founding members of the organization. When he asked him what is a cabin, he started laughing. He said, why are you laughing? He said, actually, all these people refer to senior management as cabin. He said, why? It was because when the organization was formed, it was formed by 2 or 3 people in a motor caravan. So they were running their business from the cabin of that motor caravan. And later on, when they grew out to be a big company, they still kept managing their business. Their headquarters was that motor caravan. But later on, they shifted to buildings and all that. But people had the same terminology. It was, etched in their culture. Senior management for them was always sitting in the cabin. So this is how the things are etched into the culture. So organizations are systematic arrangements of entities which are people and departments aimed at accomplishing a purpose which may involve undertaking projects. So undertaking project is not the major issue. That is, one out of many tasks. Organizations are mainly more concerned about operations, but whenever they want to bring change, only then they will start certain certain projects. And naturally, if an organization has a cultural norm, that would be inherited to the project as well. An organization's culture and style affect how it conducts the project. Naturally, if we are, lethargic people, it is basically it is a culture to be relaxing all the time, then probably project will also relax. Culture and style may have strong influence on a project's ability to meet its objective. So culture and style are grouped phenomena. When they are put together, they are generally called as cultural norms, and these cultural norms develop over time. One thing I want to say about these cultural norms, normally when we talk about, at least in Pakistan, when I tell someone that this is a standard you need to follow and this is a good standard, they say this is not our culture. This is not created by us. This is not for us. This is made by Americans, and it doesn't apply here. What does that mean? Why do we not want to adopt something which is good enough and which is working? And why are we, giving all the credits to the Americans? It was not created by the Americans. It was created by us, all of us from all around the world. So whenever we try to tell a good practice to someone, he says, no, in our culture, it doesn't happen like that. For example, in some places, they say bribery is a norm. Bribery is a norm. This is our culture. We do that. What my objection to that is, anything which is bad which is considered bad in every culture cannot be a cultural norm of any organization. There is a basic definition of good and bad. There is no culture, no religion in this whole wide universe which would say that bribery is acceptable. There is no culture which does not say honesty is a good policy. So you see, there are some universal truths. So we cannot twist things by just calling them cultural norms. Anything bad, universally bad, can never ever be a cultural norm. This is very important, which I wanted to highlight to all of you, that we normally add everything bad around us to be our culture. So does that mean we live in a bad culture? No, sir. We do not live in a bad culture. Basically, we do not want to get out of our convenience. That is exactly why we try to avoid anything good, anything new, and try to maintain the status quo. The norms include a common knowledge regarding how to approach getting the work done. So in every organization, the approach could be different. In one organization, maybe there is a system through which you get the job done. In another organization, you have to request manually to a specific person. Maybe there is a procedure created and you have to follow that. In another organization, there is no procedure. So wherever you go, whichever organization you join, you must first understand the way of working of that organization, how to approach getting the work done. Then you also need to understand what means are considered acceptable for getting that job done. That again does not mean, I must warn you, that does not mean that anything wrong could be considered acceptable. If anything is ethically wrong, it is universally bad, that cannot be a cultural norm. That's about it. So what means are considered acceptable? That means maybe in some organizations, the verbal permission is enough to start a job. In another organization, there should be a proper format and an application should be made and it should be logged in somewhere and only then you should start the job. So what means are considered acceptable is this. It is not that you are doing something bad or wrong. Then you also must understand who is influential in facilitating the work getting done. Whom should you approach? Whom should you approach? That means this is very much possible that the person who is sitting on top of the organization may just be a figurehead. He might not be there to take any decisions. Maybe the second in command, the second person in the organization is looking after the internal affairs and such like decisions, whereas a top person is just the face of the organization. He is just meeting and the external entities and stakeholders, and he is just for that purpose. So this is the job delegation. So he might have delegated all the decision making stuff to another person. So you must know who is the person who is actually going to get the job done, who is going to allow the job to be done. Okay, there is a question. What is the difference between practice of good and a bad organizational culture? Mubin, and the first things first, there is no bad organizational culture. Culture cannot be bad. There is no way a culture can be bad. Culture, a way of looking at a culture, cultures are normally formed from religions. None of the religions, no matter how good or bad the religion is, no religion is bad in this world. And no culture can be bad in this world. Cultures are good. They cannot be bad organizational culture. So, you want to speak something, Mubin? So this is my point of view. Cultures cannot be bad, but you see, they may need improvement. They may need system. But there is nothing, never going to be anything which is bad in a culture, because culture are the acceptable practices from the community. Acceptable practices. And acceptable means good, not bad. So bribery cannot be your culture. Telling lies cannot be your culture. So none of the organization will ever support that. Okay. Organizational culture is shaped by a common experience of members of the organization. So sometimes when you join an organization, it is a treat to join that organization. The way that organization functions, the way it carries itself, the way it treats its employees and its members. So organizational culture has been formed in that organization by the people who are actually serving there. Now, if you join in, you will also have to follow the same steps. Or maybe you can impact or affect the culture. But because most of the people are following a mechanism, a style of working is there, so it is highly likely that you being in minority would be influenced by them and you would adopt to the culture. And as I said, cultures are always good. So you will improve. You will improve. Here I also want to mention another thing, and that is, if you are standing in a crowd which is not disciplined, crowd is never disciplined. A crowd is never disciplined. Crowd has no culture. Crowd has no ethics. So in a crowd, there exists a crowd mentality. And crowd mentality is such that you can cause stampede, you can walk over people and kill them, you can do anything, and none of the people in this crowd will take the responsibility, because none of them is a killer, none of them is a liar, but at the same time they all killed and lied in this stampede. So crowd culture is a complete chaos. So things you can't do individually, you do in a crowd. The bad things you do in the crowd. How does crowd mentality differ from an organizational culture? Organizational culture is a disciplined group of people, and a carefully nurtured culture has been cultivated and people have adopted it. Now this might be a huge number of people in this organization, but they all are governed by the same cultural norms, and therefore they must have some same ethical values, same view of the organization, and therefore this crowd is not a crowd. This is a group of disciplined and organized people. Organizational culture is different from the crowd mentality. Organization culture is shaped by the common experiences of members of the organization. Most organizations have developed unique cultures over time by practice and common usage. Over the period of time, there is an organization existing for last 100 years. So that during that 100 years, they must have learned lot many things that as an organization, and they might have adopted good practices over that period of time. And that would have caused this organization to evolve. And suddenly you would find yourself competing for best practices. Common experiences, as we said, these are the cultural norms. They include, but naturally this is not a complete list. This is not limited to the list given, but we have got shared vision, mission, values, beliefs, and expectations. Now this is very important. If you are a part of a group or an organization, you must all have the same direction, same vision, and the vision must be shared. And this is a very important statement, shared vision. How could vision be shared? A vision, normally, who gives the vision? I put this question to you. Who gives the vision?
We
So from the executive
owner
management,
of the chairman.
senior management,
Senior
CEO
management.
usually.
Okay. So senior management gives the vision. Any other views? Rijo, any input from you?
The visions come from the top management,
Top management.
owner or the top management.
Okay.
Visions come from top. This is actually trickle down. Visions come from top to down, and the goals and information come from bottom.
Okay. Anyone else? Obin? Obin? Obin, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Actually, it takes a few seconds to unmute.
Okay.
Well, I think the vision, it's like you can say a prime direction created by the, you may say, owners, that we have this mission, we want to take our company at this point. For example, you have the company vision. Anybody can dream of it, all right? That's their vision. This is what I believe.
Okay, this is good. You mean to say that anyone can dream of the vision, and it is not only the top level management as everybody else has said?
Yes, of course, yes.
Right. So
yes, it is not limited to just the top level.
Exactly.
It can be any member.
Wonderful. So how do you react others?
Usually it comes from the
okay, comes from top. We cannot hear. We are unable to hear you properly.
I see. I don't know. 1 minute, please.
Now try it out now.
Shahid, you may continue. I will check in the meanwhile.
Yeah, so usually it comes from the top management, senior management, CEO, and actually the vision and mission is the short statement based on which we derive some strategies, and those strategies are shared with the team or the entire employees or the heads. Usually it is for 3 years or 5 years. It's a timeline of different activities or to accomplish the vision which was shared by the CEO or the senior management.
Right. Okay, I tend to.
Can I share something?
Yeah, of course.
So actually, mission and vision, actually, it is given at the incorporation level from the high ups. And the mission is that what we are, and vision is what we are going to be. So this is a small statement that says itself that the vision is the dream, as the other participant has said, that where we want to be and what is our direction exactly.
Okay. Adit, tell me one thing. Does that mean that only the top level management has the right to dream?
Actually, at the incorporation level, yes, because they are the only persons. Then it is a trickle down effect. It comes down to the stream, and this is the responsibility of the higher management, how they translate down to the stream.
Right. Does that mean that nobody else is allowed to think, and only
why not?
The dream which has been seen by the top level management will be implemented? It won't be an autocratic system?
Like, see, there is a purpose of an organization, and that purpose is given by the person and the stakeholder. So at the initial part of it, yes. But the later part of it, yes, when the team is being built and everything is all fine running, then they take the feedback from the lower management to the up, and there is a two-way process. So in that way, like the people's involvement get into that.
Okay. Let me assume that the vision has come from top. So one way could be, as I was saying, I was saying earlier that if it is a completely autocratic system, we don't need to ask anyone, and they are imposed our vision, and whether they like it or not, they will have to do it. They have to follow it. Then we could have another management style in which we probably listen to everyone, but we tell them to do what we have dreamed, right? Again,
Correct.
this is put a kind of a participatory thing. People think that they have been consulted, but
Yeah.
they may or may not agree with what the decision has come. The third way could be that we could actually lobby with the people. We see the dream ourselves at the top, and then we lobby the people and we try to convince them, and we train them. We put them through many seminars and things so many times that they start thinking that this is their vision. This is another way of doing it, that it is a make-believe system. Although the leader has seen the dream, but he has shown it so many times to everyone that everyone starts thinking that this is their dream. I'll give you the example of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Roti, Kapada and Makan. It was so popular. It was so popular, and it was, created by himself. And it was so popularly advertised down to the masses that everybody wanted to call it their own personal vision or dream. Then there is the last method, which is actually the best method. That is, vision does not come from the top at all. Vision comes from the bottom up. This is a very challenging statement I am making. I know and understand that all of you have already expressed your opinion in opposition to this. You all are saying that vision comes from the top. I only have one person who thinks that probably vision could come from somewhere else. Ji Atif.
Sir, is it possible at the level of incorporation that when you're going to start an organization, you are the person who has to think, you have to give a direction and a mission and a vision. And then how you can assume that it is being done from someone from the down? Because you have done all the hard work. You are at the incorporation level.
Right. When I am setting up an organization, there is no employee at that point in time. I may be the only one person, or I may have one or two friends sitting with me. So at that time,
we have a group of
people. We have 3 people sitting together, and we jointly visualize our vision, and start building the whole company around it. But you see, this is at that time when we did not have many people. Now our organization has grown out to be a 1500 strong. 1500 people in our organization. Do you think the same vision is going to work forever? Yatif.
No, certainly not. But as I said, like at incorporation level, yes, otherwise it's a two-way process. The information is going down, and from down the feedback is going up. So with the passage of time, of course, as per the demand and needs and environment,
I agree. So vision
management would take it.
Right. Vision is not a static thing. Vision does change. It continuously changes, and as the vision changes, the strategies change, the missions change, the values change. So everything changes along with it. But vision is not static. Vision does change. And therefore, after every few years, you must revise your vision. And all the people in the company must be taken on board. And another thing, vision should be written down in the most simplest of languages. It should be a layman's language. Anyone in the organization should be able to read it, understand it, and recite it. It should not be very very complex and difficult words used in vision just to impress someone that this is some great kind of piece of literature. It is. Vision is not a piece of literature. This could be so simple statement, and so small statement that everyone and anyone in the organization should be able to remember it. Like I gave you the example of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, he gave a slogan of Roti, Kapda and Makan. And this was so simple to remember for anyone that whether you like it or you don't like it, you keep talking about it. Everybody discusses that. So this is kind of a slogan. Vision should be that simple. Once I went to an organization from, we were doing some consultation from the United Nations side. And in that organization, there was some UNDP was giving them some aid for doing something for business process re-engineering of that organization. And when we went there, we did have a presentation from the chairman of that organization, and he gave us, this is the organization, this we have done, and we have great people and all that. We asked only one question: what is your vision? And he was completely baffled. He did not have a vision. This great organization, huge organization, a very big organization, they did not have a vision. So what he said was that, okay, please come back after 2 days and then we will tell you the vision. So what kind of an organization you think this is? Which, what kind of strategies should they have? What are they doing? What are their operations? They are not really clear where they are going and what they are dreaming. So the vision has to be shared. Autocratic system is not acceptable. Participatory, well, yes and no, but the least acceptable way would be taking the people in confidence. If at all you have to see the dream at the top level, although I don't recommend it, that only one people should be able to see the vision. But even if it is only the one person on top, he must convince everybody in the organization in such a way that everyone in the organization adopts the vision. This is also some kind of a leadership quality. The charismatic person, charisma. But the best way of doing it is you should ask everyone to think and come up with their vision, and then you consolidate that vision into the company vision. So basically, it is what I am saying it now, it is a democratic way of doing it. The person sitting on top does not decide anything. He just compiles the opinion of all and just consolidates into words. He is good with words. He can put the things into right words, and once that is done, all the people who have contributed their words to that vision would own that vision, would agree to that vision, would fight for that vision, and naturally under the vision you have got mission, values, beliefs, expectations, goals, and everything, strategies and everything. So organization would be the most interesting organization where people love the same organization. So do I make myself clear on that?
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyways, this could be a very comprehensive discussion on vision, but I would recommend a book to you all, and that is called The Fifth Discipline. The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. I'll just write down the name here. If at all you ever have time, try to go through this book. This is a very, very interesting book, and this will actually open up all the windows of your mind. How the vision can be shared, how the within the organization, how the culture and vision and everything, how should it be behaved. This also gives you a very interesting concept of organizational learning. An organization which learns by itself. There is no HR, there is no specific mechanism, but organization is like a living organism, and it educates itself. Its people enhance their competency by themselves naturally. So this is a worth reading. You must lay your hands on this book, and this is not required for PMP examination, But otherwise, this is a very interesting book. And this point, the shared vision, mission, values, beliefs, and expectations, that would rather be qualified, will be understood by you. Then naturally, the initial set of rules and regulations we provide, that also plays a role in this. Motivation and reward system, naturally, that also plays a role. Risk tolerances. Risk tolerances is, in our organization, what is considered acceptable and what is not considered acceptable. How much are we ready to tolerate? What is really called a risk in our organization? Anything lower than that is okay or not. Then how do you view the leadership, hierarchy and authority relationship? You see, in Pakistan, India, and all these countries, we usually are in habit of calling our seniors as sir. And naturally, this habit was given to us by English, by British, when they were ruling this area. But you see, when you go to America or even to England these days, those people do not call anyone by saying him sir. They call them by the last name. And the greatest respect you can give to a person is by calling him by the last name. And if you are frank with that person, only then you can call him by the first name or the middle name. You see, every organization has a different way of doing it. Even in Pakistan, I have seen many people who are, much more junior than me, and when they just call me Suhail, then I get shocked because it is not a norm in this country to call anyone by name who is senior or junior to you, things like that. But you see, the American culture has somehow infiltrated in lot many places. There are certain good things and certain bad things. The good thing is that the sir culture has gone. But we do not have that much vigilance, we do not have that much of understanding that if we do not know a person very well, this is out of respect that we should call him Mr. and last name. Right? If I am Suhail Iqbal, we should call him Mr. Iqbal. But when you get frank with that person and that person allows you to call him by his first name, then you can call him Suhail. Right? So organization to organization, this thing will differ. So how do you view leadership in your organization? What is the hierarchy relationship? All that things matter. Then what is the code of conduct, work ethics and work hours? This is where we talk about discipline. What is honor in your organization? What is ethics? How much ethical people you are? This will differ from organization to organization. And naturally, the operating environment will also impact the culture and ultimately the projects which are being run in that organization. Okay, we have talked so far about organizational culture. Organizational culture is considered a factor which impacts a project. And such like factors are considered to be part of a term coined by PMI. They call it enterprise environmental factors. So organizational culture is one of the enterprise environmental factors. We'll talk about these enterprise environmental factors in a while. They will be discussed a bit later. But organizational culture, as we said, is a part of enterprise environmental factor. Moreover, the culture and style is a learnable skill and a shareable skill. If there is a culture prevalent in our company, a new person joining our company will ultimately be able to learn and live by that culture, and the people who are existing in that organization would like to share that culture with the newcomers. So this is not something which is inherited or which is inbuilt or it is in your genes. No, culture is learnable and shareable. They may have a strong influence on the project's ability to meet its objectives. Culture and style could have very strong influence on the project ability to meet its objective. A project manager should understand the different organizational styles and cultures that may affect a project. If there are more than one organization, or maybe it is a multicultural environment, there's an American company and a local company, and they're joining hands to do this project. Project managers should understand both the cultures and styles of working, because it will be even more challenging dealing with two types of styles and cultures in one project. So this is the responsibility of project manager to first understand which kind of style and culture is going to impact the project, and therefore he would tailor his plans around that. In some cases, as I already discussed that the person shown on top of the organizational chart may just be a figurehead who is not truly in charge. Someone else is making the decisions. The project manager must know those individuals in the organization who are the decision makers and work with them to influence the project success. So you must not be talking to the wall. You must be talking to the right person who actually has the power to make decisions. In light of globalization, multicultural environment, understanding the impact of cultural influences is critical in projects involving diverse organizations and locations around the world. If there are more than one organization or they are located worldwide, then probably you have to be more cautious in light of globalization. Here, culture becomes a critical factor in defining the project success, and multicultural competence becomes critical for the project manager. You see, India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, these countries have benefited a lot from this diversification of culture. Why? The location, the Americans and British have been outsourcing a lot of work to these countries just because we are awake when they are sleeping. So when it is the work of transcription, hospital transcriptions or other kinds of transcriptions, they work all day and they send their audios to be transcribed by Indians or Pakistanis or Bangladeshis. So these people will put them into electronic format while the Americans are sleeping soundly. So there are many projects in which we have got this kind of arrangement, or the teams are scattered all around the globe, and every time someone is awake and someone is working. That way if work does not get affected, it rather we are taking benefit of the organizational of the globalization, and ultimately we are taking advantage of the cultural influences. Then comes the organizational communications. Project success in an organization is highly dependent on effective organizational communication style, especially in the face of globalization of the project management profession. In today's world, it is highly dependent upon communication, and you see project management anyways is a lot dependent upon the communication. I'm sorry, Mubin, what do you want to say?
No problem, sir. Actually, I had a question, and it's more of a little bit outside the context, but it is regarding the different cultures. See, for example, I am a project manager, and I have to deal with other cultures. For example, let's say, for instance, American culture. All right. So, what steps should I take to align my project management team or my fellows who are working under me, and to make a better synchronization between two cultures? What steps should a project manager take in that regards to help different cultures synchronize kind of thing?
Okay, there are two things to do. Number one, you must understand the environment and the cultures, the multicultural environment, what kind of people, the Chinese coming in to be working with you, or Americans or British or whatever kind of people are going to be working with you. You need to first understand them. Number two, you have to learn to listen to others rather than talk a lot. So you have to train all the people in the organization, in a multicultural environment, that we should be more receptive to the ideas and we should be listening actively to each other. And thus we will be able to learn from others. And if you put people in this kind of environment, it is automatic. This is natural that people start learning and adapting to others' cultures. Like you see, I have observed that Japanese have a specific way of behaving. When they meet you, they will present their ID card, their visiting card to you with both hands. They will bend down and they look into your eyes and they will present their card facing towards you. You see, you might have heard about that. Might have even seen.
Yes, of course.
Right. So this is a very good habit. This is considered a very good habit. But what do? We do not take a lot of care in presenting our, visiting card to someone. We hand it over with our left hand and talking to someone else, we are handing over our visiting card to someone. You see, Japanese pay attention. They treat it as a ceremony, as if they are presenting a medal to someone. They would offer their visiting card with a lot of respect to the other people. Now the person receiving it must also show the similar kind of respect. So the first time a Japanese person is meeting you and presenting you, no, it happened with me. I just took it with one hand and then tried to talk it out. That is not the way. Ultimately, I learned that if I am really meeting a Japanese person, I have to pay a lot more attention. I have to receive the card with both hands as he is presenting me with both hands, and I must show respect to him for presenting this thing to me. And I must also bend down a little. So that is reciprocation. So once you start reciprocating, you start learning. I have seen it very commonly that nowadays in higher circles, even Americans and British, when they meet, they present you their visiting cards with both hands. They bend down a bit also. So what is it? This is adoption of universal good practices. So when in multicultural environment people work together, you learn from each other. The good practices you learn from each other, and that forms the culture of the organization naturally.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Thank you.
Right. So communication is one single thing which is common, which is most important for the project. You might know that a project manager's time, most of his time, 90% of the project manager's time is spent in communicating. Although perspective is different, it is dealing with stakeholders all the time, but naturally, whatever is the organizational communication style, that will impact the project. The communication within the project will be affected or hindered by the organizational communication capabilities of the organization. You see, say in your organization, the communication system is very bureaucratic in nature. You need to have proper permissions sought in writing from so many people, and only then a thing can be communicated to certain people. In such an environment, if you try to run a project, you will inherit the same mechanism and your project will be greatly delayed. So organizational communication capabilities have to be enhanced if projects are to be successfully completed. That's why I said organizational project management maturity model. That would tell you then, when you get yourself assessed, that will tell you your communication capabilities or practices are not good. You must improve that if you want your project to be successful. As a consequence, project managers in distant locations are able to more effectively communicate with all relevant stakeholders within the organization structure to facilitate decision making. That is an example of a good organizational communication capability. If the organizational communications are good, the projects, even if they are in distant locations and diverse cultures, you still can very effectively communicate, and you can facilitate quick decision making, and ultimately success of the project might be guaranteed. Stakeholders and project teams can also use electronic communication, which is the norm of the day, to communicate with the project managers formally or informally. It has said formally or informally. So communication could be both ways. So initially we talk about informal. We keep sending emails to each other. We use texting, instant messages and all that. We use social media, video and web conferencing for fun, for informal activities. But now we have started seeing all these medias being used formally as well. So electronic media has suddenly come into our lives. It has become a part of our life, and they have been formally adopted into organizational practices, organizational communication capability, and ultimately our projects are going to benefit from it. I do understand that some of these means of communication, electronic means of communication, may be hindering in official capacities, but naturally if you can use them properly and in a proper way, probably you will not have that kind of hindrance. I know in some organizations Facebook is blocked, and lot many other things are blocked. But yes, of course, if it is causing hindrance to your organization, you must block it. But at the same time, can't you find a way of using these social media instruments in a better way? Probably you could use business through them. You could actually, do your official working through these medias if possible. Anyways, that is not the subject here. So whatever is the organizational communicational capability, we can tailor our things around that. Then comes the organizational structure. This is how your organization is structured. Traditionally speaking, an organization is structured around its operations and functions. When a project organization is formed, that does not think about change, that thinks about running the system of the organization. And the system of the organization is operational in nature. If you are constructing or setting up a cement factory, then you are more concerned about developing SOPs for running the cement factory. What are going to be the various operational roles? What are going to be various functional roles? Who is going to report to whom? And what are their jobs and roles and responsibilities? So this is all what we are concerned about. So resultantly, we always come out to be functional in structure. Our organizational structures are classically functional in nature. They are only developed for better operations and better functionality. They are not designed to run the projects, to initiate change-related initiatives. They are not designed for that. And that is the oldest way of doing the things in the functional way. Deep hierarchical structures. So organization structures range from functional to projectized. There are other structures also, like we may use a metric structure in which there could be more than one bosses, and they can have, there are various types in that, weak matrices, balanced and strong matrices. And one other type is purely, designed for project management, and that is the projectized structure, in which we do not care about the functions or operations, and the whole bread and butter of the organization is the project. Therefore, the whole organization is structured according to a projectized mechanism, in which project manager is the boss and he controls all his resources and everything. But as I said, traditionally we have got functional structures, and the problem with the functional structures is that functional structures are not very, suitable for running the projects. And you will see that in a while. These are all the different structures, and we are going to discuss certain things like the project manager's authority in a functional organization. If you try to do a project in a functional organization is not designed for project management. It is not designed for change. It is designed for operations. So if at all you have to do one odd project and you are the project manager, probably you will have no authority at all. All the authority will be held by the functional managers. A weak matrix is in which though the responsibilities of project manager and the functional manager are defined, but still functional manager is more powerful in nature. Still here, although the project manager exists, but his authority is limited. In a balanced matrix, where somehow we try to create an equilibrium between the project manager and the functional manager, so project manager may exercise low to moderate kind of authority because this is a shared environment in which some decisions are controlled by the functional manager, some decisions are controlled by the project manager. Strong matrix organization in which project manager is, though it is a matrix, but project manager exercises more power than the functional manager. Therefore, he has moderate to high authority. And lastly, projectized organization is there is no function, there is no operation, everything is controlled by the project manager. He is the man. He controls the resources, he controls the money, he controls everything about the project, and therefore he exercises almost the total authority. As far as resource availability is concerned, they will show exactly the same trend as the project manager's authority. In functional, the resource availability will be, because projects will not be given that much importance. They are not important to the organization. Operations and functions are more important, and therefore resource availability will be little to none. In weak matrix, limited resource availability. In balanced matrix, low to moderate. Strong matrix, moderate to high. And in projectized, project manager has dedicated workforce. So total availability of the resources. Who controls the budget in functional organization? Functional manager. Weak matrix, again functional manager, because functional manager has more power. In balanced, it is a mixed authority. It is an equilibrium. And in strong matrix and projectized, it is the project manager who controls the budget. Project manager's role may be part-time in the first two cases because I must clarify one thing here. If you think that you are doing more than one project at a time in an organization, trust me, you are not doing justice to any of the projects. You are doing part-time project management. It is not only two projects at a time. So most of the people are actually performing some operational duties and handling 10 projects simultaneously. So I would say they are unable to do justice with any one of those jobs. Neither they can be good operational managers, nor they can be successful project managers for any one of those projects. So part-time is a way in between, and this is not really an advised way. Therefore, in functional and weak matrix only, we have this kind of structure. We have project manager's role as part-time role because projects do not really matter for these organizations. But if the project does matter, then project manager must be dedicatedly available for the project, no matter it is a balanced matrix structure, strong matrix, or it is projectized. Project manager has to be full-time. As far as the project management staff is concerned, normally project management staff comes and goes. They come, they work, and they go away. So their availability is more difficult in the functional and weak matrix organizations. So they are part-time, and even in balanced where there is an equilibrium between the responsibilities of project manager and the functional manager, this is still part-time. But in strong matrix and in projectized, you have dedicated teams allocated to you, and therefore they are full-time. So although I would say the ideal structure for running a project would be projectized, but then it is just an ideal structure. This may not be really a doable structure. Right. So let's talk about the functional organization. I'll show you this diagram. If you look at this diagram, you will see that this is a classical hierarchical, deep hierarchical structure. On the top of the organization structure, the chief executive is sitting. Under him, there are functional managers, and each functional manager controls some staff. Dedicated staff to the functional manager. Maybe this is the account department, the finance department, the HR department. So these are the department heads, and they have got their dedicated staff. And this is very good for running functions or operations in an organization. But if in this organization we want to, run a project, then project manager does not know where he is located. He has no authority. If he is asked by the chief executive or whomsoever to do this project, then this person does not know whom to do. There is no system existing in this organization to run the project. Therefore, this person is classically not a project manager. As I said, if project manager is not available full-time, then he is nothing more than a project coordinator. So this is the role of a project coordinator, that he doesn't exercise any power, but he can be just requesting different functional managers to help him, provide him resources as if his project can be completed. So he will be running from pillar to post, and ultimately functional managers will always give precedence to their own work and not to the project. And ultimately, project will not be successful. And even if you somehow manage to succeed in completing the project, then it will be greatly delayed, or the cost would go very high. So this is not a very soothing environment for running a project. Functional organization is not a good environment for running a project. A weak matrix is, first let me define the matrix. Matrix is a kind of organization in which a person has got more than one bosses. From the perspective of functional and project management, we would say that a staff member, is answerable to a functional manager for functional purposes, and also to a project manager for certain jobs he is assigned to do on a project. Therefore, every staff member might have dual duties. One portion he would be satisfying the functional manager, and the other person is the project manager. So in a weak matrix where functional manager exercises more power and project manager still is in a coordination role, though he has been told that for your project you will get these resources which are green in color, he will try to coordinate with those resources to please be available for doing this job on that date. But because functional managers have got more authority than the project manager, and they may or may not spare these people on that specific day. Just imagine if project coordinator needs these three people to be working together at some job to complete it, and he would never be able to get all these three people together, and he will never be able to do that job ever again. There is only one chance that maybe all the three people could be spared by all the functional managers at the same time, and maybe that job gets done. So this situation is slightly better than a functional organization, but it is almost as bad. The only good thing about it is, in the functional organization we did not know who are the staff members I am going to get, but here you know who are the staff members you are going to get. But still, the availability of these staff members is still dependent on the will and wish of the functional manager. This is a weak matrix, again not good for project management. Then there is a very interesting structure which is called a balanced organizational matrix structure. Balanced matrix, this is not exactly, this is not the only solution of a balanced matrix, but you see, this is an example. What it has done is, rather than putting project manager and functional manager on equal levels, it has put the project manager under one of the functional managers. By doing so, it has converted the functional manager as a sponsor to the project manager. So project manager is under command of the functional manager, and definitely the functional manager is the project sponsor also. Therefore, now this project manager might be requiring certain staff members from different departments, and he is trying to coordinate their availability, and those other functional managers are not sparing these people. So whom should this project manager complain? He would go back to his functional manager. He will ask him that the other functional managers are not providing me resources, how can I do the project? So this functional manager will exert the peer pressure on other functional managers and make those staff members available for his project manager. And thus there is a possibility that project work can be done. In case functional managers of other departments do not help our functional manager, do not provide resources, this functional manager is directly under chief executive, so he can complain against those functional managers and get the job done. So if you want to talk about the doability of a project, balanced matrix organization is one organization in which projects are doable. I would say in a functional organization or in a weak matrix organization, projects are not doable. If at all you could do a project in a weak matrix or a functional organization, that is just your luck. But balanced matrix has made it possible. The structure I am showing you right now, project manager working under a functional manager, this has made it possible to complete a project successfully. So this is the minimum doable structure which could be had. This is called balanced matrix organization. Seeing the success of balanced matrix organization, we can apply this same rule on strong matrix organization. On strong matrix organization, what we can do is, previously we have put the project manager under a functional manager, but that functional manager might have been doing some other duties as well. Now what we have done is, we have taken away all the duties from that functional manager and put all the project managers under him. All the project managers, there are more than one project running, all the project managers are under this functional manager, and this functional manager is named as manager of the project managers, directly answerable to the chief executive, and all the other functional managers are at peer level of this person. This person, manager of project managers, would just be coordinating for all the projects with other functional managers and make it possible for all the projects to happen, and in case of any difficulty, chief executive would be approached. So we have capitalized on the balanced matrix structure experiment, and now we have come up with a strong matrix organization in which success is guaranteed. We can, if we can carefully handle and manage all the project managers, this could be a win-win situation. This is probably the best you can get in an organization. You can have a strong matrix organization, all the project can be successful. The projectized organization is an ideal organization. Though it is ideal for doing the projects, but this is hypothetical in nature. How can there be an organization in which there are only project managers under the chief executive and nobody is looking after the different functions like human resource, finance, and this and that? That means we have completely sacrificed all other roles and we have just put project managers directly under the chief executive, having their dedicated staff. They will be able to perform excellent projects. But who is looking after their welfare? Who is facilitating? Who is holding all the various other functions of the organization? This is a hypothetical organization in which no operations can happen. No operations can happen in a projectized organization. Only projects can happen. You cannot come up with a very a good example of this projectized organization, but one odd organization I can ever come up with is maybe there is a donor agency project in which they hire a project manager in a country where they want to donate. They put the funds under his control and ask him to mobilize his own resources and manage his own resources. So that case, project manager would be the HR manager, or he will hire a staff for internal functioning of the project. So he will be responsible, self-accounting for all the affairs of his project. So in that way, probably project manager who is all in all will not only handle the project but also all the other affairs about the people, staff, finances, pays, salaries and everything. He would be developing his own functions within his project. This could be one example I could come up with. Otherwise, projectized organization is just a dream. Actually, all these 5 organization structures I have told you, they are all hypothetical. Classically, you will not see exactly one of these structures in an organization. What you will find in an organization, running organizations is a combination of something. You know, some part of the organization may look like very projectized, another part of the organization is a weak matrix, and overall this organization is more like a weak matrix structure or a functional structure. So within an organization, you will find a hybrid of everything. So that would be called a projectized structure, or composite structure. And this is just an example of composite, that in this you can see there could be, this is not exactly how it should happen. There could be a strong matrix impression being created. There could be a project running under one functional manager with having its own project manager there, or something running in a weak matrix. You could find more than one organizational structure imitations into this composite organization, and this is how actually the organizations will look like. Not exactly like this, but a combination of all the 5 organizational structures could be found in any organizational structure. Okay, are we okay till now? Any comments?
It's fine, sir.
It's okay, sir.
Okay. Let us then move on to the next topic, that is organizational process assets. We will talk about organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. Okay, what are organizational process assets? Essentially, organizational process assets are documentary in nature. Number 2, these organizational process assets are the assets available within the organization by the organization. And these assets are for doing various processes in the organization. For if your organization is an engineering organization, then for for mixing the concrete there might be a process, and for doing that process you might have certain assets available, some machinery available, some procedures available, some mechanisms available, some roles and responsibilities defined. So every organization will have certain process assets depending upon what kind of processes they do. Now these process assets are essentially documented in nature, and they would be available as SOPs or methods or tools or techniques or procedures or policies or rules, whatever could be the documentation. These process assets can be very useful when we are trying to do a project, because in a project we have to conduct some processes. And naturally, whatever is the business of my organization, whatever kind of processes we do, whatever kind of process assets we hold, we may have to use most of those things which are already available within the organization. So all these policies, procedures, rules, regulations and all that would actually be contributing a lot to each and every process of the project. So everywhere in project management, all the 47 processes of project management would be taking these organizational process assets as input. When I say these organizational process assets, I mean the relevant organizational process assets. And as I said, organizational process assets are normally documentary in nature. They are documents like what could be organizational process asset? Rules, regulations, policies, procedures, frameworks, standards, models, methodologies, and these are one type of different documentary items which are available within the organization. These things are called the processes and procedures. There is one other kind of organization process assets that are called corporate knowledge base. These are the old files from the previous projects available to be consulted by any project which we are trying to start. So that could include the documents, field documents, different data available like risk registers and issue logs and change logs, change registers, and all those things which were created in previous documents, previous projects could also be documented, and these could also be consulted. And then in the processes and procedures, we could also include the templates and formats for doing several things. Like if I want to write a charter, what is the format of the charter is given in the processes and procedures in one part of the organization process asset. And on the other hand, I could also consult the olden data, that is the corporate knowledge base, and see how someone has created a charter in a previous project. Naturally, they would have been using the same format I'm getting from processes and procedures, but this format will actually be a filled form of an older project, and which could be very helpful for me to create my own charter. So you see, organizational process assets will include any or all process related assets from any or all of the organizations involved in the project that can be used to influence the project success. These are the plans, processes, policies, procedures, and knowledge bases specific to and used by the performing organization. They include any artifacts, practice, or knowledge from any or all the organizations involved in the project that can be used to perform or govern the project. So these could be formal or informal. They also include the knowledge base, which are the lessons learned or historical information or data from the older projects, which also includes the old files, completed schedules, risk data, earned value data. These all are the knowledge base. So in light of this, we can say that we can divide the organizational process assets in two parts. One is the processes and procedures, and the other is the corporate knowledge base. The processes and procedures, as I said, let me enumerate it again to you. Processes and procedures will include rules, regulations, processes, procedures, frameworks, standards. Then we have got methods, methodologies. Then we have got the templates and formats. All these things which I have just enumerated, these are processes and procedures. In corporate knowledge base, we could have lessons learned, we could have historical data, we could have various registers, we could have logs of different documents, we could have the completed plans, drawings, field data, and everything which was left over by older projects. So this is what both of these things together are called organizational process assets. In short, some people call them OPAs. Some examples of processes and procedures first. While we are initiating and planning a project, we need to have guidelines and criteria for tailoring the organization's set standard processes and procedures to satisfy the specific needs of the project. So those guidelines and criteria could be sought out of the organizational process assets or processes and procedures. Specific organizational standards such as policies on HR policy, health and safety policy, ethics policy, project management policy, procurement policy, whatever kind of policies you can think of. Standard project and product life cycles could also be established by the organization and they would be used by the project. Quality policies and procedures like the process audits and improvement targets and checklists and all that could be. These are just the examples. Don't just try to remember them. They are just few examples for you. Templates, there could be hundreds of templates or formats. This could be risk register, there could be charter, there could be work breakdown structure templates, project schedule network diagram templates, contract templates, or whatever. There could be hundreds of them. In execution monitoring and control, we can have a change control system. In financial control, we can have time reporting, required expenditure, etc. Issue and defect management procedures, we could have issue and defect control mechanism, issue and defect identification and resolution, action item tracking. So all these various documents could be used for that. Organizational communication requirements, we could have a number of documents. We could have procedures for prioritizing, approving and issuing work authorizations. Work authorization is not a project management thing. Work authorization is basically an enterprise environmental factor. But the procedure is documentation. Therefore, it is included here. But work authorization is what? Is a system. Systems are not documents. Systems are enterprise environmental factors. So this is an internal enterprise environmental factor, how the work gets done in this organization. This is work authorization system. So that could be, the documentation of that could be included in processes and procedures. Risk control procedures, how the risk categories are made, probability definition and impact, how the matrix is created. So these things. Standardized guidelines like work instructions, proposed evaluation criteria, etc. In closing, we can have lessons learned, we can have final project audits, project evaluations, etc. So these were all the processes and procedures. When we look at the knowledge base, then probably we will have a lot of documents which we have gathered over time from the previous projects, and there could be a configuration management knowledge base which would keep a record of all the standards, policies and procedures and any other documentations of the previous work, various versions and baselines. Then financial databases, actual data is available of the old projects. Information about the labor hours and incurred cost and budget and all that. Historical information and the lessons learned databases of various type. Issue and defect management database. Previously we talked about issue and defect system, issue and defect documentation. But now we are talking about the issues and defects which we have encountered in a previous project, and they are available into our database. So I am consulting that database to find out which issues I can encounter in light of that. Process measurement databases, then all the project files which include the different baselines and other documentations. This much is for the organizational process assets. Then we have yet another thing which is called enterprise environmental factors. We have been talking about it before. We said culture is an enterprise environmental factor. Organizational structure and style is enterprise environmental factor. So what are these enterprise environmental factors which we generally call as EEFs? It refers to conditions not under the control of project that influence, constrain or direct the project. So these are uncontrollable things. These are not controlled by the project. They can be imposed on the project from inside or outside of the organization, but they can influence the project in two ways. Either they can constrain the options available for the project, or they can facilitate or enhance the project management options. Enterprise environmental factors like organizational process assets are always considered as inputs to most of the planning process and other processes also. Project management processes, many of the project management processes, rather most of the project management processes will have enterprise environmental factor as an input and also organizational process asset as an input. Sometimes these things are also being output from various processes, and that is only happening when we are updating something. Like you see, we have created a lesson out of our current project and we want to submit it into the organizational process asset. That would be called as organizational process asset update. Similarly, we have created a new practice in managing the human resource which could change the culture of the organization. So that process may result in enterprise environmental factor update. Anyways, these enterprise environmental factors, whether internal or external, positive or negative, they can enhance or constrain our options in project management. They can surround or influence the project success. Project success is dictatable. These factors can come from any or all of the enterprises involved in the project. Who is speaking? Right. Mubin says, kindly upload both today's and yesterday's lectures over YouTube. Okay. Mubin, yesterday's lecture I had uploaded. Probably it would not be visible right now, but after this lecture I will check it and it will be available. Actually, it takes a lot of time after this lecture to convert these files into that format. So I will just start doing it now, and it will take 2, 3, 4 hours, and after those 3, 4 hours when I come back to my computer, I will be able to upload it. So they will be uploaded. Today's and yesterday's lecture will be uploaded. Other 5 lectures are already there, but these 2 lectures will also add to that. Anyways, so that was enterprise environmental factor. What do they include? As we have already known about it, organizational culture is a part of enterprise environmental factors, your structure, your processes, your geographic distribution of facilities and resources, where the things are physically available. Government and industry standards are also impacting our project. Regulatory agency regulations, code of conduct, product standards, quality standards, workman standards. Now, just remember, organizational process assets were classically documentary in nature. Enterprise environmental factors are not classically documentary in nature. These could be just factors. Just because it is too cold, I can't do something. So being too cold is a factor. This is not a document. And if it says regulatory agency regulations, you could argue that these regulations or standards are documents. But remember, these are not my organization's documents. These are documents from outside of my organization which are influencing my project. Therefore, they are enterprise environmental factors. I will not treat them as documents. I will treat them as factors. But all the rules and regulations, policies and procedures within my organization are documentary in nature and they are organizational process assets. So these enterprise environmental factors also include existing human resources, their skills, discipline, knowledge, etc. Personnel administration mechanisms, how to staff, retention guidelines, employee performance, etc. Company work authorization system, as I was explaining to you, is a part of enterprise environmental factor. This is an internal factor. Market condition is an external factor. Stakeholder risk tolerance is an external factor. Political climate is an external factor. And the organization culture and style is an internal factor. Organization's established communication channels is an internal factor. Commercial databases. These databases could also help us create better plans. Project management information system is an automated tool which could be existing, which could include a scheduling software, a configuration management system, information collection and distribution mechanism, some web interfaces or something. So this could be a PMIS, and PMIS, you see, MS Project and Primavera and all the software available for project management, they are not classically PMIS. They are just scheduling software. Some of these software, like enterprise version of MS Project and enterprise version of Primavera, they may have more functions than just being a scheduling software, but may not have all the things which are written here. Maybe web interfaces are available on enterprise. Maybe some of the information collection and distribution systems are available. Some of them, not all of them. So PMIS is a kind of automated tool or a software in which we can manage all affairs of a project. All information within the project can be transported into in that. So that much concludes our enterprise environmental factors and process assets. So if you have anything to say, speak now. Yes, please. Nobody? Okay, if there is nothing to say, I will continue with project stakeholders and governance. Here we have three topics: project stakeholder, project governance, and the project success. Now, this is not much different from what we have been talking earlier in the previous chapter. We did talk about the organizational governance. We did talk about the operational stakeholders. Now we are talking about project stakeholders and project governance and ultimately the project success. You see, if you want to understand what a project stakeholder is, then as I have defined before also, this is anyone and everyone who has anything to do with my project. This is in short. But as per the definition, stakeholder is an individual, group or organization who may affect or be affected by, or even who perceives that he may affect or may be affected by. Classically speaking, this person is not affecting the project, is not affected by the project, but he thinks he can. So we must consider this kind of a person who perceives himself to be a stakeholder to be a stakeholder. Make him a stakeholder, because such like people are more dangerous than anyone else, because they can create certain lobbying groups, certain mechanisms which will hinder the success of the project. Therefore, I have to take this person also into confidence. So stakeholders are persons and organizations who are actively involved in the project. First of all, the people who are working in the project, who are making the project, who are funding the project, who are stakeholders with the project, who are key stakeholders, and even those who are providing something to the project, or whose interests may be positively or negatively impacted. So these are also the people who may not be actively involved, but somehow they will either benefit or they will be negatively impacted by the performance or completion of the project. So if this project is done, livelihood of a specific person is at stake. That is a negative impact on that stakeholder, and that stakeholder is very much a candidate to create hurdles in your project. There is another stakeholder who will benefit from the completion of this project, so that is definitely a stakeholder. But do not forget the negative stakeholders as well. Different stakeholders may have competing expectations that might create conflicts within the project. You see, there is a positive stakeholder, there is a negative stakeholder. Positive stakeholder wants the project to succeed. Negative stakeholder does not want the project to succeed. So apparently they both are pulling the project in two different directions. So they have got competing expectations. One wants to go west, other wants to go east. So project is being stretched out. So we somehow needs to understand all the stakeholder needs and expectations and try to remove the conflict, and soothe the stakeholder. So these stakeholders may also exert influence over the project, its deliverables, and the project team in order to achieve a set of outcomes that satisfy strategic business objectives or other needs. So we must see that these stakeholders, how important they are. As we studied earlier in the previous chapter, that there are also operational stakeholders. Operational stakeholders may also turn out to be your project stakeholder. Not all of them, but many of them or most of them could be your project stakeholders. So do consider them when you are identifying the stakeholders. If they have anything to do with your project, probably include them into the list of the stakeholders. But please do not include everybody's name in the stakeholders, because that will cause a lot of problem for you. Unnecessarily, if you are going to put everyone in the world on the stakeholder list, then you will not be able to manage all these stakeholders. So anyone who has to do anything with the project must only be included in the stakeholder list. If someone is not affected by or is not able to affect our project, and he does not even think that he can, then why the hell are we considering everyone in the whole wide world as our stakeholder, because everyone is not our stakeholder. Then governance, as we were talking about the organizational governance, the good governance and all that, and we said organization sets certain rules through this governance, and those rules are complied. There is a compliance mechanism. If somebody does not comply, he must be punished. He must be checked and he must be punished. Only then the discipline in the organization will exist. Now, organizational governance were the rules or laws for whole of the organization. But projects and operations and programs and portfolios, whatever is running within the organization, they are all governed by the organizational governance. But at every level, if I am having a program, that program will have its own governance structure within the wider organizational governance that will abide by all rules and laws of the organizational governance, but set its own rules and laws for managing its program. Similarly, a project will have its own governance structure which will abide by the program governance and the organizational governance, but it will set up for the project its own rules and regulations and laws to be governed within the project, and they will be strictly abide by. The alignment of the project with stakeholder needs or objectives is critical to the successful management of stakeholder engagement and the achievement of the organizational objectives. Project governance enables organizations to consistently manage projects and maximize value of project outcomes and align the project with business strategy. That is more important, because if there is a check and balance system, there is a governance mechanism, then we can maximize the value and keep our projects aligned with the business strategy under that governance mechanism. It provides a framework in which the project manager and sponsor can make decisions that satisfy both the stakeholder needs and expectations and organizational strategic objectives, or address circumstances where these may not be in alignment. If at all we find that our organizational objectives and stakeholder needs are going in different directions, then we have to find a solution to realign them. So project governance will serve that purpose. That will help us formulate rules and laws to that context. As we already talked about who are the stakeholders, we said they are internal, they are even internal, sometimes external. They are positive stakeholders, they are negative stakeholders. Those who are working on the project, they are performing stakeholders, and there are some stakeholders who are just advising us. The project manager's duty is to manage the influence of all of these various stakeholders in relation to the project requirements to ensure successful outcome. So this is a very difficult job for a project manager, to keep a balance amongst all these various stakeholders. Remember, every stakeholder, no matter how small or big that stakeholder is, every stakeholder has some responsibility and has some authority. Well, some of the stakeholders which are apparently visible, we can easily say, well, this is the responsibility of this stakeholder and this is the authority of this stakeholder. But most of the stakeholders, we are unable to allocate any responsibility or authority. But do remember that they have varying levels of responsibility and authority. And no matter how small or big a stakeholder is, how positive or negative a stakeholder is, they will exercise some authority and some responsibility. For example, a project manager is a stakeholder. He has certain responsibility. He has certain authority. Project sponsor is another stakeholder. So these are easy stakeholders. What about the customer? Customer has certain authority. He can reject what you are submitting to him. He has a responsibility to provide you enough data to collect the requirements and all that. What about the general public? What is their responsibility? If I go to the general public to collect certain data through questionnaires or whatever, then it is the responsibility of the general public to provide me the answers to my questions. If they don't, then they are not contributing to the cause of the project, and therefore they should not expect anything from that project. It is just like if you have never voted in an election, how are you there complaining about the elected representatives? You did not select them. So who are you to comment on them? Similarly, if the stakeholder, the general public, did not help us reach certain decision, probably they lose some of the right they have. But anyways, whether they lose that right or not, they do have an authority. What is that authority? The product I'm creating for, which is to be used by the general public of the country, the general public, whether they have contributed, they have fulfilled their responsibility or not, they have the authority to reject that item and they do not buy it from the market. Ultimately, my project is affected by this attitude of the stakeholder. So I have to change this stakeholder attitude and try to make him use his authority in our favor. Stakeholders, as you might have recognized so far, are really very important for us. As I said, there is no small stakeholder, no big stakeholder, no negative, no positive. All the stakeholders are important to me, and I must have a mechanism of identifying these stakeholders very carefully, understanding their degree of influence on the project, and this is going to be a continuous process throughout the life of the project. If I do not do that, if I do not recognize the stakeholders, I miss out on some of the stakeholders, then that is going to somehow impact my project. It is going to be a failure. Either it will be extended beyond the timeline or the cost will be substantially increased. We have to understand how to deal with positive and negative stakeholders. We have to look at their needs and expectations. Interest of the positive stakeholder is best served by helping the project succeed. Interest of the negative stakeholder is served by impeding the project's progress. So I can't satisfy these two stakeholders. I have to find some other strategy to deal with that. An important part of a project manager responsibility is to manage the stakeholder expectations. This can be difficult as stakeholders often have very different and conflicting objectives. But you see, why are we fighting with our negative stakeholder? Why always? Why should we always be fighting with our stakeholders, negative stakeholders? These are our competitors. Maybe I can create some kind of synergy by joining hands with one of my competitors. The biggest competitor I have, I may go to him and ask him to share this project. I want to share this project with him. So let us join hands in a joint venture or something, and we can both benefit from it. So synergy is a very important and very useful tool which helps us grow together. So do not ever always have to fight with your competitors. Sometimes you can be friends with your stakeholders as well. Project manager's responsibility is definitely to manage the stakeholder expectations and also to create a balance between the positive and negative stakeholders, and do not ignore any one of these stakeholders. Maybe you are very happy with the positive stakeholders and you do not even identify the negative stakeholders. Do not ignore them. Ensure that the project team interacts with these stakeholders in a professional and cooperative manner. You see, our project teams are not trained to deal with the stakeholders, so my first suggestion would be keep them away from the stakeholder as much as you can. If at all they have to come in contact with the stakeholder, my team members, then I must educate them, train them in a way that they should always be courteous and professional when they are dealing with the stakeholders and be very cooperative. But at the same time, they must understand that they are just the team members. They are not making any decisions for the project. Therefore, they should not commit anything. In case project stakeholder does ask them certain questions, they may answer, but if there is a decision involved, they may clearly mention that this should be done by the project manager or the project sponsor. So please consult them. Or they can tell that yes, your point is valid and we can do it, but there has to be a change request moved. So please move the change request and probably it will be done. Project stakeholders could be internal to the project, external to the project but internal to the organization, or existing outside of the organization. So first of all, let's talk about people who are inside of the project. Project manager is the biggest stakeholder within the project. Then we have got the project team members, project management team and project team members. Project management team means the people with project manager who help him plan. And team members mean all the people who even are working on the project, the laborers and all people who are actually working on the project. When we look outside of the project and within the organization, the biggest stakeholder is the sponsor. Then we have got other people from the same organization who have some interest in the project. Maybe the operations manager, maybe the functional manager, maybe if there is a program manager on top of me, he is also a stakeholder. PMO is there, they are also a stakeholder. Portfolio manager could be a stakeholder. So there could be many stakeholders of that kind. If we look outside of the organization, we can have customer as our end user as the biggest stakeholder. Then our contractors, sellers, partners and all those people could also be the stakeholders. And there could be many other stakeholders like government agencies, political groups, media groups and all that. So this is how we can classify all the different stakeholders, but also whenever you are identifying the stakeholders, be mindful of the fact to identify the negative and positive both stakeholders. I think I will start explaining these stakeholders tomorrow. If there is any question so far, we can answer that. Please. Any questions?
It's fine, sir.
Okay, wonderful.
It's clear.
Okay, wonderful. So probably we should call it a night then, and we will meet tomorrow again, same time. So thank you very much and take care.